Welcome back to the 15-minute study break podcast when the study break never actually lasts 15 minutes. And wow, it's been a really, really long time since we've released an episode. I think our last episode was probably released in January, which is pretty crazy. Um, we've really missed our insightful conversations we've had each other and our also very funny moments. And we hope you have too. And so just to get started with like this podcast, it's basically just going to be a rundown of what has happened over like the last 4 or 5 months in our lives, what's been going on in the world, and maybe what we think is going to be happening in the future, potentially in 2025. And of course, we promise to be more consistent with our podcast episodes in the upcoming few months and years. So hopefully that's to come. And just to start off, my name's Jack.
Oh, I'm Ivan.
Music.
I guess we're all co-hosting this episode today. There's no like real like one person host. Anyways, we have really a lot to talk about, so let's just get into the action. I guess my first question for everyone, we can all swap around asking questions. I guess how's your summer going?
I guess I could start. Well, summer has been, yeah, it's been like almost a month since summer started. But I'm gonna be honest, summer school just started again. So I'm taking intro to business. Um, and then next week it's starting this organic chemistry lab, which I have to go back to Berkeley for, and this online theater class. So honestly, doesn't feel like summer felt like it ended already because I have a midterm in 2 weeks now. Um, and but I think for all of us can relate that once you hit once you enter college, summer doesn't really feel like summer because people are going to work literally a 9 to 5 as interns. I'm sure you guys can relate a little bit, but either you're working or you're doing research. I mean, I do feel like, even though maybe we don't really do much interning or like pouring some coffee, making coffee or taking out the trash, but we're doing research, just listening to whatever your mentor tells you to do. But I feel like it it really feels like a 9 to 5. You go there, you wake up, you go to work, and you come back, and you're like, what the hell? It's already like 6 o'clock, and I felt like I've only been doing one thing, right? So honestly, I feel like we should just cherish these moments. That's the only thing I've realized once summer started. Like we should really cherish the time we've had. Like honestly, school, even with school, I feel like studying and going to school and preparing for tests, you feel like you have more free time than doing 9 to 5. Um, but that's just my takeaway from summer. So, but honestly, it could be worse. It could be worse.
Degree. I'm working pretty much 9 to 5 in Houston right now at a wealth management company. It's called Main Street Wealth Management, and they work under Stifel, which is like an investment banking slash wealth management business. So I'm working there 9 to 5, and I can verifiably say that I am definitely an intern. Most of the days I'm filing papers. Right now I'm doing some pretty cool stuff. I'm working with client portfolio and well, not actually doing any trading or anything like that, but I'm just creating reports for them, which is kind of neat. But I guess uh, the coolest part is when you get off work and then you can go home and like study or whatever. But I do agree with you, Ivan, that the summer has not felt like a summer at all. Definitely not a high school summer where you just go to the pool or you just like hang out with friends and maybe do some light reading, studying. But yeah, I'm also taking a class this summer. It's definitely not as hard as organic chemistry. It's geology because I have to get it over with. Um, so yeah, that's kind of what's going on with me right now. What about you, Jack?
Yeah, so for me at least, all my internships are like pretty remote. Like I didn't find an internship when I was actually in school, so I began like filling out applications on LinkedIn or Handshake, two very helpful resources. And then I filled up a lot, got a few interviews, and got a few offers. I got like three internships that pretty much do this very similar things. They're all like really like sourcing work. One of them is for like a small private equity firm. The other ones is actually like for a startup that's thinking about doing like private secondaries and stuff. And I'm also venture scouting for two firms, which means I have to get in contact with potential startups. And I feel like that work's definitely interesting. But also like if you stack up on remote work, like you realize like it's pretty tough. Like you have to manage your time pretty well, and it often goes beyond a 9 to 5. Like over the summer, I've been busy trying to not only fix up my sleep schedule, but from my school year, but also like getting swamped in work and how do I manage that? So I think that's definitely been like a learning lesson for me. And also just some of the work I'm doing has given me some like industry experience. Of course, I set myself a goal that I'd be like starting to study my technicals for next year's recruiting session. But to be honest, I haven't really done that yet. So I think I need to get onto that. And I guess like since we're on the topic of like t talking about summer, we just passed the whole semester without recording a podcast episode, and I bet you guys have all missed our like, oh, what's poppin' sessions at the beginning of each episode. So I guess like what was popping about our second semester of college?
Zach, you want to go this time?
Just this time. Um, it was pretty rough. I'm not gonna lie. That's I would say that's the main reason why we didn't record is that it got kind of hard for a lot of us. Yeah, I ended up doing a stock pitch competition. We got absolutely destroyed. Um, and I pitched Expedia to a panel of judges, and um, that was a really great experience, and I learned a lot from it. One of the main things I learned just some modeling techniques and things like that. Made some more friends and stuff like that. Hung out with friends a lot more. Like when I say hang out with friends, I mean I'm just at uh, at the trade like we at A&M we have like a trading floor kind of deal, and that's where we hang out. I don't do anything else fun. I worked at a coffee shop the second semester, just during my free time. Made some money. Uh, I don't know. The classes were just really hard for some reason. I don't know, Jack, if you have accounting as like a weeder class, but we have a weeder class as accounting. It's like intro to accounting. It's like genuinely hard for no reason. So, um, got through that, and really that's it wasn't all that interesting. It's just a lot of work. Um, what about you guys?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, that's the first time I heard like weeder classes exist outside of pre-med classes.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay. It's yeah, pretty much at least accounting. It's like it's a weeder class. Obviously, it's not a medical class, so it's not as hard as that. But the entire point of the class or all the tests is they give you too much information to finish in the time they allot you. So like it's
Interesting.
really hard to finish on time. And that's what I mean by that.
Huh. Gotta love those classes.
That's not accounting for, I guess like I can maybe like talk about accounting at Michigan because I'm in the business school there. Accounting is actually a required class. So, and honestly, if you have a good professor like I did, I thought it wasn't too hard. But of course, like in Ross, there's a lot of like cramming, and then I feel like it isn't too hard to like cram the content into like a few like maybe like 5 or a week of studying. Um, but some of our grading system was a little bit of a joke. If you know about the Ross curve, you know that you have to beat 60% of your kids in your class to get an A in your core classes, and then you have to beat 40%. You have to beat 40% of your kids in your class to get an A in like your elective classes. So like you're kind of like pitted against each other in your class. You know what I mean?
Wait, that's so nice. I wish I had that. That's crazy. No, we had no curve. Like the biggest curve that we were given was it was 3 points. Like she was like, okay, this question was kind of wrong. So if you got it wrong, she would give you 3 points. That's like the only curve that we were given throughout the entire like accounting department for 229.
Okay, I would
Just
also say
That's
like
crazy.
I kind of like phrased it in a very positive manner, but raw students itself, we absolutely hate the curve because it doesn't matter what score you get, you just have to beat the rest of the people in your class. So your scores pretty much depend on how other people do. And
interesting.
that's why we hate it because we all want to collaborate. Ross is very social. Of course, Michigan is a public school, so we love like doing our social events and just making a lot of friends. But also like if you're pitted against each other, like there's gonna be ops. And like we would hate that to see like one of our people that we thought we were cool suddenly become ops. And that's kind of happened a little bit to me like this semester, and I'm not a fan of that.
Interesting. I mean, I feel like at Berkeley we also have something similar, especially in like the math classes, because they have like this math curve where they have like a very standard curve, you know, like most people get B's, 20% get A's and A pluses, and then like the rest get like C's and fails, right? We have that, but then I noticed a trend, especially in my second semester, is that like it depends on the tenure of the professor. Like the professor's full tenure, they don't give a crap. They don't give a flying crap, you know? Like they'll obviously give a curve because they make their tests way too hard. That's like my first semester, I took a multivariable calculus. He had full tenure, my professor, and like his tests were like ridiculously hard. So obviously there will be curves, but like he didn't really give two thoughts about anybody who would fail, right? So like he's like, oh, look, average is 80%. Cool, we're done here. Average is a B, we're done here, you know? And then but like my second semester I took linear algebra and differential equations, but he was just a lecturer. He didn't have any tenure. So he was actually like, you know, caring about his distributions. And, you know, it was much easier, to be honest. For me, it was much easier in his class than the first semester class. Maybe it's due to, you know, I know how to study better, blah, blah, blah. But I genuinely felt like because the lecturer felt, you know, felt like he had to play a role in making sure that we actually learn the material rather than the professor before, he would be like, oh, yeah, I've taught the material, average is a B, I'm done here, you know? Um, but honestly, for anybody who's listening, I think all college courses, you know, there's always obviously difficulty of the course, right? Like you can't say like certain courses are easier than other course. Like there's obviously going to be like a hard course and a small, an easy course. But I think like at least 50% of the difficulty depends on the professor, right? Like you can take the same exact course but have two different professors, and then the experience will be so different, right? Like one professor could probably like teach better, and two actually like think about the grading and think about, you know, how the students feel, while the other could give two flying craps about your students, right? Especially when they have full tenure. So I think anybody who's listening, it's one important to, you know, pick classes that you think are manageable. That's one, and then two of those classes, make sure the professor is manageable. Um, and I'm sure Zach and Jack both agree, but I think that was just my experience freshman year. Honestly, just dealing with that, like finally learning the lesson the hard way. Like, gotta look at the professors. But also, I just had a question for you guys. Were classes harder in the fall than the spring? Because that's how Berkeley usually is. If you take like technicals during the fall, so just like math or like engineering, you know, like those technical classes during the fall, it's going to be like really hard because, in my opinion, I'm not, there's no scientific backing, but like it's those fall classes are when like the freshman gunners are taking them. They're trying to like get everything over with so they can take like the hardest classes in the school, you know? And, like those people were like in high school, they're like, oh, Amy, or like, you know, they did Musico and they got like platinum or something. They're all taking those classes. So like even though the class is hard, they're still getting like hundreds because you're like gunners and geniuses. But then in the spring, those people have moved on into like upper div engineering classes, but now it's like all the people who are taking it slow come in, so it's a little bit easier. I don't know how you guys feel about that.
I don't think that's the case at
Really?
Michigan. But also take what I say with a grain of salt because I'm a business student. Of course, I definitely think that engineering students have it tougher, and I know some personally some Amy Yusaku qualifiers that breeze through the weeder courses really easily, really easy for, like for the major. Like you know how there's like prereqs for your major, and for at least the computer science major, there are three like prerequisites that are all like extremely like difficult. I tried my hand at actually one of them and I dropped it halfway through. I was like, no, I don't want to do this. And I was like, I'm a business kid. Why am I stressing myself out for like a CS minor? But honestly, like I don't think it gets like too much harder. Like I feel like even I guess like the degree of difficulty is like the same because like even people in like for in their first semester of sophomore year, they're still trying to like figure out what they want to do, maybe or take some classes that fit their requirements or just to learn something interesting as a skill too, they try to take these classes and they're like, oh, damn, I'm kind of screwed. So I think in general for freshmen at least, the fall classes are I think easier. I mean, as a raw student, I probably say that. I don't know about engineering because that story is probably very different. But also, I also like want to comment on like, oh wait, I look, you forgot what I was gonna say.
Uh,
So, coming, coming. Say in my experience, fall was a lot easier because when I don't know if Ross has something like this, but A&M, when you sign up for classes for A&M, the first time they make you actually go to College Station. Most of the time, I think like there's an option to do it online, but they like heavily encourage you to come down to College Station to do all your classes and meet with your advisor and whatnot. Um, so all the advisors tell them to take like less credits than what you think. People were like, "Oh, I'm gonna take 18 credits. I'm gonna take 21 credits or something crazy." And then the advisors are like, "No, just take 12. Like, get into college." I think the different aspects of college make it harder. Does that make sense? So I think the hardest thing for me was, learning how to be a college student for the fall, not necessarily the classes, and the classes were a bit harder in the spring. But I think that like we're a product of our environment, so I think that it kind of depends on what's going on. I think it's different for you, Ivan, because you're going to Berkeley, you've lived near Berkeley for a long time, so like I think you can just kind of extrapolate the classes for what they are. Whereas like I'm learning College Station and how to be a college student and all that. And I don't know, Jack, if you feel the same way. Like there's a lot of learning stuff outside of the classroom in your first semester and second semester. There's different.
yeah, I would agree. Like honestly, for me, it's not a huge environment change. Obviously, I'm moving to a more urban place like Berkeley as compared to suburban sprawl in the South Bay. Um, but honestly, the weather has been pretty similar. On it's been a little bit cooler at Berkeley. Like right now, where I'm at home, it's like probably 70s, but at Berkeley right now it's like mid 60s, which is super nice. Sun's out, So the weather honestly super nice. But my friends who have lived in the Bay Area all their lives and moved to East Coast for college, they get like low key homesick, depressed because like it's always raining, it's even snowing. Obviously, the first day of snow is cool and all, but when it snows, then you get a little bit under the weather. And it's significantly colder. Like I've been in East Coast maybe like November-ish when it's not even that cold, and I'm like freezing my butt cheeks off. And then I'm like, damn, it's cold. I'm like wearing 5 layers and it's so cold. And then up here, I'm like, oh no, hoodie, t-shirt, hoodie, I'd be good, right? Like, well, even without a hoodie, I'm good. But in the East Coast, you gotta like t-shirt, long sleeve, hoodie, and then another jacket on top, which is wild to me. But honestly, like all my friends have been telling me, like, especially those that like moved far away. Obviously, like it's a good change, right? You gotta learn how to adult, learn how to be yourself, work with yourself, but also like the distance, people will feel homesick, and then plus, taking classes at school, and then like what if you fall sick? Like actually funny story. Um we have like this thing called ed discussion. I don't know if you guys use that. But some kid, I wasn't checking ed, but I checked after the class, after the final, because people usually post like really funny stuff after a hard test. Um, but then like some guy was saying that he was super sick, like the day of the final. Like he was like 110-degree fever or whatever. And then like you can't miss the final or else like because the grades are literally due the week afterwards. Um, but like just like thinking about that and like what if you get fall sick plus final season plus you're like 500 miles away from home, you know? So it's extremely difficult and not for me because, if I felt under the weather, I could just go home and say like, oh, I actually did happen. Like, oh, I'm sick. Just go home for 3 days and then have my mom and my dad just help out. But then like for what about the kids who are stuck in the dorms when they're sick, you know? Um, but honestly, I feel like you guys can probably talk more about this, but it's just so many things, factors you must consider in during your freshman year that you shouldn't overload yourself with schoolwork because college is so different from high school. This is coming from someone who took a lot of APs in high school. It's so different. Like even compared to APs, think about APs but compressed into a semester or even a quarter, right? That's what college feels like. And but honestly, there's not enough like you're not forced to get like everything correct in college because there's so much information, but it's just also that much information, the pacing plus making time for yourself and learning how to manage that time has been really difficult. I don't know, how about you guys? What do you guys think?
Yeah, I can definitely. I haven't really given I guess like a recap of my freshman year, but I guess like I could just start with by saying that my biggest takeaway with my like second semester has definitely been more of like a more time management perspective, how I got to manage like my priorities and everything. Because like I started to see that some of the classes weren't teaching me as much that I needed to know for like my future like interviews or something as some of the clubs that I joined. And so I started dedicating more time into like the clubs. But of course, I still want to get good grades in my classes. So of course, I set time aside to, I guess, like study for those exams and everything. But also like in high school, I feel like I guess my social life was really limited because I had to stack 8 classes in a day of high school, and I don't know if it's this like applicable for pretty much everyone else, but I know other schools that do like a A B day with like 4 classes, which is very more similar to college, and I can I can say that they definitely had more of a life in high school than I did. But honestly, in college, like when I transitioned to college, I like tried to take classes that were I guess like less they were like less on the workload so I could see how should I prioritize like classes, club work, like my I guess like my social life or what I just like to do, like working out and everything. So I think that's just like a big thing to control in college, like especially for people that are going to their college first years or anybody who's watching down the line. Managing your time like is like super important. You have to balance your classes, your extracurriculars, or just everything you want to do. Maybe if you want to rush a fraternity or sorority, that's going to take a lot of time. And so just advise you to have some sort of organizational system to manage your time. I think that's one of the biggest takeaways. I guess something else that I did in my like freshman year that was like pretty notable. I would say traveling on my own without my parents is something I did for pretty much like the first time. And Michigan is pretty close to Chicago, so pretty much when I moved in or moved out, I had my parents come with me and help me out. But when I went to New York, I went with like a few friends for a venture capital retreat, and I didn't have any my parents to help me out at all. I mean, I called them from time to time to ask them about what materials to bring, but pretty much a lot of the logistical stuff, like such as like ordering tickets or like getting on the plane by yourself and like doing everything, was done by yourself, especially when you travel. And I think that's like an experience that I definitely like learned from. Definitely can see myself traveling in the future by myself or with a few friends in the future. And I thought that vacation was pretty fun. Got to try a lot of great places, got to visit a lot of VC firms, and it also pretty much kicked off my food review journey, which was pretty fun. So I guess that's like my overall big takeaway from my freshman year.
We came from high school that was AB scheduling, and I can confirm that I didn't have much more of a life than you did, Jack. I think that honestly, the AB scheduling, it didn't really, it didn't really like affect how much workload you were doing because the way teachers would just make things due the day after, like on a day that you don't have class, at least in my high school. Um, my biggest takeaway from first year is priorities. I think we've said that. Like, who do you want to be in college? And like, really think about that. And if you don't know, I think a lot of people say it's like, oh, it's okay to not know who you want to be. But the first year went by so unbelievably fast. And um, like first semester went by. I rushed a frat like a little bit, and I can say that it's a waste of time for me personally. If you want to do that, that's fine. But like know that you want to do it and do it. Like really think about what you want to do in college before you actually start taking classes because if you don't know what you want to do and who you want to be when you start taking classes, I think that's when grades start I don't want to say well, they start slipping a little bit. because you're confused about where you should be in college and like what you should be putting your priorities towards. I think my first year kind of I fell to that. That was one of my problems. I wanted to be in like so many different buckets that I didn't prioritize just studying as much as I should have. Um, and I mean, my grades suffered a little bit because of that. And I think that's something I regret a lot. But next, I mean, the good thing about it is that next year I know exactly what I want to do, and I have a clear goal in mind, and like I know the actionable steps that I can take to get there. I think that's really important for a college student, is to like set a 10-year plan or like a 5-year plan. Where do you want to be at the end of college? And then work backwards and find like actionable goals that you can have. Um, and I think that was something that I really took away from the first year. I think that one of the biggest moments that I had was probably there was this one day that I was sitting in I got up at 7 a.m., got to the business school, like took a bus to the business school, sat in the trading floor for like from it was 8 a.m. by the time I got there until 10 p.m. And I was just working with this one person and learning from him. And he's actually going to Point 72 for their academy, and he's so smart, unbelievably smart. And he spent the entire day like teaching me different stuff and kind of like working on my pitch and stuff like that. And that was like really instrumental to where I want to be, like thinking about where I want to be in 4 or 5 years. And I mean, we'll see if it works out, but I know what I want to do at least. And yeah, this is a pretty crazy day. Like, it was just I don't know. I don't really know how to describe it. It was a weird day, but it was like amazing. It was just absolutely amazing. Um, but yeah, I think that's probably my number one takeaway is just like set the priority from the get-go and like stick to it if you can. It's okay to change, but like try to stick to one thing and like specialize as much as possible.
Yeah, I told like honestly, Zach, your this thing you said in the beginning, like being in every single bucket, like you want to be like a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and a little bit of that, a little bit of that. I
Yeah.
feel like I relate to that experience a lot, and I feel like a lot of my people I've met at school also had that experience. Like once you come to college, you're like, oh my god, there's so many things you can do. I can do business, I can do pre-med, pre-law, engineering, this random subject I found and I found it super interesting for no reason. I just want to like do research more into it. Like it's so tempting to want to do everything, but as you go through college, you learn that that's not possible. You know, and I would say like that's just one obstacle. Like you learn this one thing, it's like you can't do everything, but you can definitely do a few, and you should be able to do that really well. But I feel like a lot of people I've met are, because they're so overwhelmed by this many choices, they kind of burn out a little bit and they lose their passion. And so I think that's, at least for our listeners, I think that's one thing to keep in mind is that it's so easy, obviously, get sucked into different things and create new passions, but it's also incredibly easy to get burnt out and say, you know, what is the point of doing everything when I can't, you know? And I think that's one lesson that you learn and something I feel like a lot of people do talk about, but just you really got to learn firsthand. But I would say what has kept my passion from burning out is honestly my friends and the clubs I'm in. Like, honestly, like a lot of people would say like, oh, big consulting clubs that are like top. At Berkeley is a huge consulting culture, and like everybody's trying to get to the top club. But I don't think really it's worth it, right? Like honestly, make the best use of your opportunity. Like go to a club that you're genuinely interested in, and regardless of what state it's in, right? Like I'm in two clubs. One is a more established club. One is a little bit, we have a history, but it's kind of like we're kind of in the dark ages, like a lot of things have went wrong and we're trying to fix it. But because of, that club being, it's the my school's EMT club named BMRC, our insurance company went under. So we are not allowed to do a lot of things that we have the capacity of doing because, healthcare, you need liability insurance, but we don't have that anymore. So we can't do a lot of the stuff we train to do, we practice to do. And honestly, that's why a lot of people have been leaving, have been thinking the club is kind of useless. But for me, it's kind of opportunity. Like the people who stay in the club have the same, are as passionate as me about medicine and emergency medicine specifically. And I've made so many good friends, got so many new connections through that club. But honestly, it's just that club that kept my passion going. Like every day, every week I go to the training, I'm reminded, why I'm doing this for. And generally, like, but I feel like this is just a lesson everyone has to learn firsthand. Regardless how many times we tell people, oh, clubs, they're hit or miss. You gotta so many different things you can do in college, but it's also so easy to burn out. People say that all the time, but honestly, you just have to go there and learn and persevere. What I've done to persevere was, you know, forcing myself to get out of bed at 6 a.m. to go to the gym. Honestly, I feel like that's the best decision I've made because obviously I'm not a morning person, but by forcing myself to get up to bed and I have a goal, going to the gym. Right, so to walk across campus and go to the gym. But then by the time in the gym I finish my workout, I'm like, I'm not gonna go back to bed. Right? It's probably gonna be like 8 or probably I work from 7 to 8 or 8:30. I'm not gonna go back to bed. What am I gonna do? Probably do work, get some work in before getting lunch. Right? So I forced myself to do work, to go to the gym. But I found that when I'm not, waking up early to go to the gym, like when I'm at home, I don't go to the gym because I don't have a membership or anything. I feel like my day goes by pretty slowly. Like I wake up, it's already like 9 or 10. I'm like, okay, what am I gonna do with my life? And then go to the kitchen and find what breakfast I do. So I kind of lose that, short-term vision of what I need to do to that day. But I think that's probably the biggest thing I found that really changed my life.
Oh yeah, also I just want to add one thing, I guess like off of that, like something that Ivan said at the end was like super relatable without with like forcing yourself to get out of bed like super early, trying to become a morning person when you're not. I've been doing that with some of my a new like I guess like new activity that I've been like trying to learn. And I've been trying to learn golf for quite a while. Like a lot of my friends have been playing, but I never really got to hit outside of Top Golf, and that was because I was just kind of swinging at the balls. That's why I was like hitting somewhat far. But I've been like forcing myself to go to the driving range every day with my parents at like around 7 or 8 a.m., which is honestly like really. And after like I come back, something that Ivan said really echoed with me. Like, do I go back to bed? No, I immediately like start doing my work or start getting some sort of motivation to stay around and be effective. So I think that's definitely something I want to carry into my sophomore year of college because oh my God, my freshman year sleep schedule was totally screwed. And it was screwed after I got back from Halloween. Like, and I know Halloween weekend's a big weekend in terms of having fun, in terms of at universities. I know we all go to public schools. We all kind of know what that's about. But I really needed some sort of motivation to fix my sleep schedule, and I feel like I finally got that. And that kind of leads me to my next point, saying, oh, it's okay to be open-minded. It's okay to suddenly learn new passions and maybe like take a lesser role in some of your old ones. Something I regret a lot when I was thinking about it was like not playing cello as much as I did in high school and college. Like in high school, I would put myself, oh, I'm gonna practice every day or something. I was in an extracurricular youth ensemble. But then in college, I just simply did not have time for it. And I slowly started to drop off with cello, which I felt was like okay. But then I realized, oh, I really miss this. I need this as part of my life. Either I listen to music or I can actually grab a cello and play it. So I think, oh, and then over the summer, I my parents tried to get me to play every day, but I feel like, oh, maybe my relationship with cello has changed a little bit. While some of these new passions, such as maybe doing food reviewing, is picking up. So I think it's definitely very okay for you to like drop some of your old passions in high school that you wouldn't think about dropping, and then maybe learning some new passions. And then one last thing before like we move on to I guess some of the other things we want to talk about. Having good friends that make you accountable is super, super valuable. Like I know a lot of like friend groups in freshman year, they revolve around going partying and everything. But once you like find actual friend groups that like really help you out with like some like job recruiting or just giving you like a lot of advice, or they're the type of person that'll be willing to be with you if you like need any like help, if you're kind of like getting close to a crash out, and they'll be there like kind of like they kind of like go through it with you, but like you're doing different things and you're going through it together, like just like the mutual support, and also just if you want to have the similar goals and they want to hold yourself together to reach them together, that is just so important. I think I've definitely found some people at Michigan that have been able to hold myself accountable. And I know Zach, when he talked about his experience with his friend that's heading over the point 72, just holding him accountable, holding him for being perseverant in terms of like working for a stock pitch, because that's kind of what you're doing in the industry every day once you actually have a job. I think that's like super valuable. And I guess we've talked a lot about I guess our freshman year recap in summer, and now I think it's time to get into the important events and trends to recap over our past like months that we haven't been recording a podcast. So I guess like maybe some of you can like spotlight something that's like been pretty interesting over the past few months that you've been following.
Let's do it. And obviously, one of the biggest things that's happened in the past few months uh, is tariffs, and especially for like what we're interested in. At least me and Jack. Ivan, I feel like you're still up in the air about like what you want to end up doing, but I think me and Jack are pretty dead set on finance. Um, so the tariff impact has been kind of interesting. Um, I know, Jack, you said you're part of a venture fund. You're probably part of just investment clubs and stuff like that. So I don't know if you guys have any portfolios or anything like that, but it was really interesting to see how fast our investment portfolio in the investment club at A&M changed, or like the equity club and investment club changed from like actually holding equities to just holding treasury bonds because of the rate. Um, and just like the discussion around that has been really interesting. Obviously, it didn't end up as like crazy as what it could have been, which I feel like I kind of understood it wasn't going to be as bad um, from the beginning. But I feel like it's just kind of put an impact on kind of the president's image or whatever, and just like uncertainty in the markets right now is actually kind of crazy. Um, I think that's probably the most interesting stuff that's going on is just the insane uncertainty as to like where the future of the US and in relation to other countries is. Um, I think that's the most interesting. Oh, I read an article about how ChatGPT it's just like formal studies about AI and uses of AI when students. So essentially, they took um, a group of students, split them into three categories. Student, um, one section of students wrote a paper fully using AI, like not doing anything. One used AI a little bit, and then the other one just wrote it themselves. And they were looking at brain activity during it. Um, and the portion of your brain, I forget the name of the portion because I'm not smart like that. So um, the portion of the brain that uses critical thinking didn't turn on at all for the two using ChatGPT, and like only turned on for when they were actually writing it themselves fully. So it's kind of interesting to see. I think it kind of reading that shaped how I think about AI and like where it's heading for us as students and as workers, and kind of scary about jobs. But we can. What do you guys think? I'd rather you guys talk.
Yeah, I was gonna talk about AI honestly. Like, I'll but regarding Zach, what you said, I'm gonna be honest. Like, I can't deny I haven't used AI for my classes, but honestly, I feel I don't. But I draw the line as in like, do you let AI write your essays or not? But um, the reason why I use AI is to cut out the time, thinking about, okay, I have this project. What am I gonna do the project on? So I go in AI and say, this is my project. This is the guidelines, and I'm interested in blah 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 blah. Give me some topics I can potentially talk about, and then it gives you a bunch of topics, and you're like, wow, this is BS. This is absolutely horrible and super generic. Um, and then you just continue doing it, and I will do it for like probably 30, 40 minutes. Just keep on narrowing, being more specific, or jumping on, going back different points, and finally landing on a topic I think has potential. And then next I use AI to say, okay, so now get me started with the research. Like, and then they'll give me sources and be like, you just made this source up, right? But like it gives you like a good, it I feel like for me at least, it just unlocks so much potential. Like so many things, it's because I use AI to brainstorm. And you're like, wait, I've never heard this thing before. And I click on this link and it's like, oh my God, like how have I never learned about this before? So I think AI is that use, and people who learn how to use AI correctly actually could be, launched forward instead, as like Zach said, like just don't let AI take over the critical thinking part of your assignments, but allow it to actually boost, amplify your critical thinking. I think that's like the most important thing to learn, especially in college. But my topic, I want to talk about AI. I don't know if you guys have seen, but the AI video making has now changed so much. Like I'm gonna be honest, like some videos I'm like looking, I'm like, wait, this looks kind of strange, but you can't really pinpoint it. And you go to comments and you're like, okay, this is AI. But sometimes, you look at a video, you don't even think about it, and you look at the comments, you're like, this is AI, and you're like, what? And you go back and you have to like look at the details and finally realize, oh wait, this is actually AI. Like I'm gonna get scammed when I'm 80 years old. I'm gonna be honest. um, but like just like the jump, like I know you know about like the Will Smith eating pasta thing, right? Like that's when the beginning of the AI video making thing. Um, but like now is genuinely scary on how good it is. Obviously, it's pretty easy so far. It's decently easy to tell what is AI, what is not AI. But thinking about the progression, a couple years, quality has increased this much. What about next year? I, like it's gonna be exponential growth. So that is kind of scary, at least for me. Um, but regarding what Zach said about jobs, that's also a worry. I think my parents are more worried about AI taking over jobs than me. Um, but honestly, I think in healthcare, so far, there's just some scares as to which specialties AI can take over. Mainly, people are saying like radiology, so people who read like X-rays, CT scans, etc., etc. People say that AI will most impact there, but some other people are saying like, oh, it's gonna take over this part, that part. It's really uncertain, honestly. But for my short term outlook is that it can boost the industry. Like if we can use AI correctly, it will allow doctors to spend less time, typing up what they did with the patient and more time with the patient themselves. So more issues get addressed. But I think that's in the specific context of when AI is being used correctly. And especially, I know we're a business podcast, but with business and healthcare, those two really don't go hand in hand. Business wants more profits, but the primary concern of healthcare is to help people. And when you help people, you're not really generating profits, you know. And I think a realistic outcome with AI in healthcare is that physicians are spending less time taking notes, but also they're going to spend less time with patients just to get, before maybe they can see 15 patients in the morning and afternoon. Now they can see 20 or 25. So it's going to be less emphasis on the patient and more emphasis is churning through them so that insurance companies can bill each patient and just get more profits in the end, in the long run. So I think that's also a very realistic standpoint, but something I feel like shouldn't happen, but definitely could. So I think maybe you guys can still add some insights on what role business can really play in healthcare. But with the AI stuff that Zach brought up, I think that's probably realistic, future.
Yeah, just wanna, I guess, like maybe talk about like my perspective on AI. Like I think over like the past like few like weeks when I've been like experimenting with different AIs and seeing like what it can do, I just like suddenly like realized that like holy like that's crazy. Like AI could potentially take like over like certain things that we do on a daily basis faster than we think it is. Like everything like the projections, they think that oh AI could do this in this amount of years. AI can do this in this amount of years. But I feel like there's a huge risk, especially with a lot of like I guess like the non very like humanistic like jobs like AI can take those like over like really easily. I've already seen like a lot of people in the job market, especially in the I guess like more of the computer science sector, they're already like really struggling with like finding a lot of jobs. And this is why a lot of the smartest people I know, and also just a lot of people on LinkedIn, have actually resorted to making their own AIs to revolutionize the future. Basically, if you see the build a stealth startup trend on LinkedIn, it's pretty similar to that. But I think it's like something they're resorting to. Of course, it's super high risk and high reward. And if they're willing to dedicate the time and if they have the right knowledge at the right time, of course, it could be very successful. But I still think with those like new AI startups, the success failure rate is pretty much going to be the same. I think like of course there's a lot of different niche things that people are building, but I still think that not there's no way that all of the startups we see on like LinkedIn they're being promoted or some of the stealth startups that people are working on in privacy, like those not all a large amount of those startups are gonna fail. And I think like the people who do that are doing very like high risk, high reward when they suddenly realize, oh, maybe the job market for computer science is suddenly becoming super, super saturated. And I think from like a business perspective, like since I want to do finance, I think Zach actually brought this up to me before we started recording this episode. He gave me an article and I read through it and he said in the very, very near future, AI has the potential to take over some of the equity research, some of the analysts, and even a lot of the associate jobs. And that just really got me reflecting upon like maybe some of the work I was doing in my internship right now, which is a lot of like the sourcing and due diligence work. Like I thinking about that in my mind, like I feel like that is just so easy for so much of that portion to be automated by AI. Of course, like maybe like more of the outreaching part to like the people to like make connections. I would definitely prefer doing that like by person to maybe like make a more like emotional connection or maybe like communicate like why you need them or why they need you. I think that's definitely something that should be more done on a humanistic level. But like, just like finding things and just like doing like a lot of research is is something that AI can do really, really easily and at a much faster pace than humans can. And like, of course, I've read through some of the equity research reports that I get access to, and that article that Zach sent me earlier, they told me that it usually takes like 2 weeks or 3 weeks to generate those reports. AI can probably generate those within a day, or like not even a day, within like 20 minutes. Like, there's one AI I want to spotlight that I've been personally experimenting with and enjoy using, and it's called Manus AI. I'm not sure if you guys are like familiar with it, if you're but I've been like looking at it, and when I first discovered it, when it was open to personal use, I like ex immediately experimented with like a slide deck stock pitch on like a certain stock that I was interested in, and like even though there were problems with the output slide that I tried to get them to fix, like the slides just present a huge like revolution from what AI slides could do. Like I asked ChatGPT to make the same thing, just put all the text on a blank PowerPoint. Like Manus AI actually puts these images in and puts these elements in a way that's visually appealing. And that like really shocked me and that just instantly made me realize, damn, AI could take over what I want to do in the future faster than I think it's going to be. And I think a lot of people that are working like maybe not non-humanistic jobs like healthcare or something, I think they should probably be concerned about maybe some of the risks that AI is like presenting to them.
I
And
mean,
also,
Jack, you
I guess a
sorry.
follow-up question for that, like, I guess like what are some of the AIs that you guys like enjoy using the most?
Oh,
Honestly,
Jack, wait.
yeah,
Sorry, but I just
yeah,
want to
no,
say
you go.
something. But Jack, you said about like humanistic aspects, right? But combined with what I noticed with AI videos, I think we all would agree. Like, like, if you have a Zoom meeting and you're presenting a slide deck or a pitch to clientele, who's stopping you from making an AI video of some dude who's good looking, has like good looking, which looks are a really huge part of business, right? Looks good, talks well, talks in a way that's understandable. Who's stopping you from doing that, right? Like, I feel like that's probably with pretty realistic in the like next few years. Um, and that's what I think,
Here,
Jack, you're trying to get into, right? Like, um,
here's my
And I
opinion.
think that's definitely a concern that I would probably have.
You could,
But
you
also
could,
like okay, but also like I guess a question there like once you like present like the I guess like the people that are analysts or like maybe associates, they're gonna ask like a lot of questions. So like if you have an AI video, like how are they gonna answer them? Like I still think this is like something that people are like thinking about. Like they might have to like develop this. But I definitely see it where in the future where like AIs could like have like a big role in doing like these presentations. But in terms of like the questioning stuff, like I'm still like kind of confused where AI could play a role because if if you're an analyst who made like the report, obviously you ask like AI to probably make a lot of the report, but like how's that gonna work? You know, like, I'm still a little bit like confused about like the future, you know what I mean?
use the people in finance at least might be able to keep their jobs. I think that AI, it's all about pattern recognition, right? Most of the time, it can't think critically. Um, One example, I watched a video not too long ago. AI can solve a really, it was like AI could solve a really, really hard math problem, but it couldn't solve a problem of, have you ever seen those like games or video games where you have to like, there's like stacks of blocks and they look different colors or different shapes and you have to like arrange them so that the same shape is on the same peg. Do you guys understand what I'm talking about?
I think so.
Hey, cat. So it couldn't solve that because it hasn't recognized the pattern before, so it couldn't draw it up from the internet or anything like that. So I think that like AI doesn't necessarily have the best critical thinking skills, and that's kind of what's important to the market. I think another interesting thing to think about is that as AI improves, there's more efficiency, right? So what's going to happen is that companies will become more efficient, and therefore their clients are going to demand um, higher returns or like a lot more work because they're going to be way more efficient and in the actual company itself. I think that people are just going to demand different things. I feel like there'll still be uses for human labor in finance. It's like, what will that look like? Which is kind of scary. Um, yeah,
I mean,
that's my take on it.
when we talk about finance, we also talk about like quant, right? Like, will quant get taken over by AI? Which I don't think, right? What do you
No,
guys?
No, I don't. I think it's very like difficult for like AI to like come up with a very like I feel like quant algorithms should be like super adaptable to like what's going on presently in the markets. And I think the best way for quants to do that and like not lose like on some of the money they could gain is to have that algorithm be developed by humans because I think humans can understand the current context better than AIs. Yes, Perplexity and maybe some of the more advanced versions of ChatGPT have access to like some of the data in like real time. They could probably access data that was available the day before, even the day of, especially early. But like if you have X or any like sort of social media and you have like any sort of idea what you're going on, if you're listening to like certain like press conferences as like an analyst, you can just adjust these models like immediately in your mind and then maybe sometimes they'll give you a good payout. So I think the smarter quant firms would probably stick with humans in the future. But of course, I don't know what it's going to look like with AI firms. Like, of course, there could be so many different applications of AI into so many of these big finance roles, but we just don't know what they look like as right now. Of course,
Mm.
a lot of the big names in finance and corporate, they said that AI is going to play a much larger role in the field, and but I still am a little bit like fuzzy about like what it could be in the future. Like, I have no idea.
Sorry, my cat wants to get let out of my room.
okay, all right.
I have to
I was
cut
gonna
that
say
out.
that.
Like the
I was
fit?
Yeah, the PJs. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Are those Nautica? What are those? Are those Nautica PJs?
Not as like what I got from Costco, you know? Oh.
Yeah, they're
No, we
just
cut that out. We
Nautica.
cut that out.
I'm a censor it. But
Um,
actually, I had sorry to interrupt, but I actually had something to say. But I don't know if you guys knew about this, but Microsoft had an AI, a chatbot they trained on Twitter, and then because Twitter and like racism, they kind of go hand in hand. But basically, what happened was um, because so many people were talking it and then talking to it, and then being like literally racist, the chatbot became racist. I think it became like white supremacist, I think, or something like that. Um, and like very misogynistic because people kept on feeding it that information, and it ultimately got shut down because it was spewing like racism and sexism and homophobia and stuff. But I think that's something to think about, especially in the context of business, right? Like, it's AI. The point of AI, at least right now, is to learn, and people can manipulate AI to learn specific things, right? Uh, I don't know what you guys can take with that information.
Yeah, I think of course like a lot of AI first, if you want to develop it, you need to like train it in a way to you keep like giving it super like a lot of like different tasks. And I think also like I guess since we're talking about like important events to recap as a whole, I guess like this could be a little bit of a transition away from AI. But like once you're training a lot of AIs and stuff, you need a lot of data to 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 help the AI out in terms of training. And I think over like the past like few months, I think the rise of data centers has been like pretty relevant. Of course, like suddenly a lot of AIs and like a lot of big tech companies that implement a lot of AI or like a lot of GPU companies, they have been saying like, oh my God, like there's so much data that we need. And then even on like some of the LinkedIn blog posts, when you're including like words like, oh, please do this, oh, thank you to AI or something, that actually takes a lot of data, surprisingly. And just thinking about that, like data center companies have probably have risen pretty rapidly, I would say, based off the past few months. And just maybe another level off of that, nuclear energy has been something that has like kind of exploded onto the scene, especially over the past 3 months, ever since like the I don't remember what the is it called doomsday tariffs? I don't remember. It was like the first like few days in April, but ever since then, like nuclear stocks have been like surging, and there's like load of new agreements between like big firm and big like nuclear energy producer or uranium enrichment producer that are suddenly starting to come out now. And as someone who studied nuclear stocks and pitched a few of them for some of my clubs, that has been something I've been like that's been something that I thought was actually really interesting that I wanted to tie into AI. And I think that is something that probably deserves a lot more attention than it is given right now. I know data centers has probably been given a lot of attention, but I guess like nuclear energy, since they're 24/7, it looks like nuclear energy can meet requirements of high data centers. And hopefully we'll be looking forward to see what type of role that nuclear energy will play in the future.
Yeah, nu I feel like nuclear energy actually has been on a decline actually for the past decades because Chernobyl and Japan with the tsunami. Um, People feel like the public at least feels like nuclear energy is more of a threat than an energy source, which is really kind of true, honestly. But nuclear energy is super efficient, and there's not much waste it produces. Obviously, it does produce very highly radioactive waste, but compared to coal, fossil fuels, it produces much less wasteful energy. But with the high-profile disasters spewing nuclear waste all over the place, it has some controversies, I think. But I feel like private companies could use nuclear energy as a private thing, but I don't like ultimately it comes down to what the government thinks. If the government wants to shut you down, you really have nothing to do. You should shut down. Also, it's super difficult to obtain nuclear what do you call it? Like isotopes, like the energy sources. I think they use
They use uranium, I'm pretty sure.
well, it's like
That's
a
the
very specific isotope of uranium, which is super rare, and usually only governments have that because the energy you use to make nuclear energy is also used to make nukes. So, like, only typically only the government has access to those materials. So I don't know how much it could impact. Like obviously AI centers need a lot of energy and a lot of water and cooling. But if we add in nuclear energy, potentially it could become more efficient, but also, you know, it actively becomes a brewing bomb, you know.
Yeah. I think that one thing to consider is that since Chernobyl, since Japan, there's been a lot of changes in the technology behind um, nuclear energy. I think the biggest con, I've I wrote a paper in eighth grade about nuclear energy and how um, a lot of companies, the use of thorium is actually better. It's usually more efficient, creates less waste, and it needs radium to for it to for it to work. So you need two different compounds, and how some nuclear companies do it is that they'll have to prevent a meltdown, they'll have them connected. They have to be like connected to create energy. And if it gets too hot, they have a sort of like cork thing that will melt and separate the two, and it'll cool down. Something kind of cool that I learned, and it was eighth grade. I don't know if it's still applicable now, but I think that nuclear energy is kind of interesting. I think that it would make the most sense for what's going on in the future in these like AI data banks and all that, because I think that um, although I think that there's huge startup costs to building these giant facilities, whereas like with coal or oil or anything like that, any other energy source, it's um, it's a lot easier to just pull it out of the ground than to build these giant, huge um, reactors and all that. And I think that that's kind of deterring governments away from it, because like if you look at Ukraine and what happened in Russia, like Russia attacked Ukrainian nuclear plants and then they're just shut down, and that's so much money gone to waste. So I think that's like that kind of deters people, and it might deter the U.S., but I don't really see anyone invading the U.S. in a second. But like, what about terrorism? You know, I feel like it's so easy to destroy something like that. I guess I don't know. It feels like it has a lot of risk to it, but a lot of benefit as well.
Yeah, I think it's like very like high risk, high reward. And I don't know, like I guess like since I've looked at other energy sources too, like the I guess like solar energy is not 24/7. It kind of like depends on like the I think is it the weather, like the sunlight coming down. Like if it's a rainy day, if it's like raining for like a long time, you're not getting any energy. And I think similar thing about like wind. I'm not too exactly sure about wind energy, but if the winds are high, they're pretty effective. If there's like zero wind, it's like not effective at all. And of course, we know that fossil fuels, they can't last forever. And like a lot of projections say like, oh, coal's gonna be used up by a certain year, oil's gonna be used up by a certain year. I think with the continuing usage of AI and like since the transition to another alternative energy source is just like so slow, I feel like the fossil fuels are gonna burn up much quicker than we think it is. It's probably gonna burn up like maybe 2 or 3 years quicker than what is projected. And of course, like we can't like forget about like water energy. I don't know too much about like that like sector like with dams, but also like water is used for so many different things. So like we don't want to just use it for energy. Like we want to drink clean water. We want to use like water to like power different things. Like I mean, there's just a lot. So I think in my mind, nuclear energy is probably the most feasible as of now. But of course, if there's like another nuclear disaster, um definitely there's going to be some sort of controversy around, oh, should we keep continuing using nuclear energy or like how is that going to work? How are AIs going to manage like the hell amount of data that they're getting? And I think that's definitely something to like look into. And like speaking of like a lot of like oil energy, like I mentioned like fossil fuels, I guess like a lot of like geopolitical conflict is like going on that's like really increasing oil prices. So I guess like maybe looking into the future, like what do you think is going to go on with I guess oil prices and stuff like that?
Well, I mean, what Iran, like I today I think said they're blocking off a channel that like 1 in 5 oil barrels go through, I think, or something like that, a pretty significant portion. Um, so like honestly, foreseeable future, it's kind of guaranteed that oil prices will go up. um, and I don't want to like talk about politics here, so I'm not going to do that. But the stuff that's been going on recently will, is like I wouldn't say like 100% certainty, but 98% certainty that it will drive prices back up. Well, not even back up, even higher. Because inflation has been ongoing and it hasn't been slowing down. It's just going to go up. And especially when we talk about economics, energy is core, right? Like it's if energy goes up, everything goes up. Um, and you know, this is stuff that is, in my opinion, preventable, but certain things happened, and now we're here. So
Yeah, I definitely agree. Don't want to really touch upon the political side too much, but I think oil prices are gonna pretty pretty much like keep increasing for like I guess like for some of the short-term future. Of course, since there's so much like volatility going on with like just like geopolitics and even with the markets, it's just really hard to predict what could happen any day, you know. So I think in the near future, or at least this upcoming week, we will definitely see like I think the oil prices will go up at least. But it's just so hard to like project what could happen in the future. Like anything could happen. Like sometimes there's gonna be like tariff, a big tariff, and then they scale it down, and then they apply it to so many different things, and then they scale it down again. Like there's so much going on. And I think like a lot of people are kind of like sick of it. I can't even lie.
I think that I'm of the opinion that probably won't last very long. Um, because the Strait of Hormuz is used for so many different things in so many different countries, and I think that it doesn't just affect the U.S., you know, so I don't think that will last very long because people need supply chains. We saw that during COVID. We need supply chain. Um, and I think that if you're holding oil right now, you're pretty happy, but that's kind of, I mean, that's kind of interesting.
but
Uh,
Zach,
good.
sorry to,
Yeah.
but I'm just gonna say this happened, I think in '80s or '90s when OPEC decided to, because of U.S. involvement in the Middle East, they just cut off everyone, and gas prices went up. I think that's the point. Because it affects so many international countries, them choking, like putting oil, slowing down the transfer oil, it only makes it more effective. Because you're like, hey, you're getting affected right now because the U.S. hit us with bombs. That's why you tell US to do whatever we want, right? It only puts more pressure on us as compared to countries in the Middle East who have that capability, right? It's because we're so reliant on fossil fuels and coal, not even coal, but like natural gas, oil. It will only make Iran's talking point even stronger compared to the US.
Um, I agree with that. That I think that it makes them stronger. But what I disagree with is that I don't think that other countries would turn to the U.S. and be like, "This is your fault." I think that um, I think other countries would stand behind the U.S. in an operation to open the strait and get it flowing again. That's my opinion. I think that um, if we look at like also in the 80s, if I'm they had a lot of help with holding it blocked, and I don't think that has a lot of help behind it. They don't have a lot of supporters besides themselves. And I was looking at the military budget for Iran. It's less than what Florida has for its military defense budget. They have like $22 billion and Florida has $32 billion, the state of Florida. So I don't know how long it would last like if the US actually ended up doing more than just what they already have done. But I have heard that some people have talked about using tactical nukes, which is kind of scary, but I don't think we
Yeah,
should talk about that.
I was gonna say
Yeah,
Iran
that would be
potentially has nukes, right?
yeah, which I
And
think that they I'm in the camp that they should not have. Like the that would be very scary for them
I mean,
to have them and use them. You know, so I think that a
regardless,
lot of people would I think a lot of people in the world are against that, and that they would work with the U.S. to stop that from happening, and thus the Strait of Hormuz would open up.
I mean, China is also one of the biggest trade collaborators with Iran, and China
Yeah,
definitely has nukes. So I feel like regardless of anything going down, this could like if any result outcome is not going to be good for us, people, citizens, or just people living their lives, having our own problems. None of these outcomes are going to positively benefit us.
yeah,
Yeah, and also
I
like
agree.
just
I agree.
and also just going off of that, like if like one country, I think there's like a agreement with all the countries that have like nukes that they have preset targets on who they want to fire. And if one nuke is fired, then all the nukes are gonna fire at the same time that are from pretty much all the countries. And just imagine like that's gonna lead to like mass like I don't even want to like talk about it because it's gonna be like so nasty because like a lot of people if that happens like a lot of like innocent people are gonna die and that could definitely like be a huge problem. I really hope that this doesn't happen in my lifetime. I'm seriously hoping it never happens in any lifetime that there's ever some sort of like nuclear war because that's gonna be much more destructive than we think. And then suddenly we're going from living a half decent life to trying to figure out how to make it out. You know what I mean?
A
Like
fallout in real life.
This is an interesting fact. So the people who at like the nuclear plants that hold all the bombs daily, they get messages. They're fake messages, obviously, but they don't know the difference. They don't tell them it's a drill or anything like that, and they're like totally blocked in from what's going on outside. And they get messages through a phone telling them, okay, send the nukes every single day, and they have to go through the process of like firing nukes, but like it doesn't act like there's no it's like a two-way verification, right? So no one in the White House or wherever actually verifies it. So like their side says yes, the White House has to say yes as well. But every single day they get calls to like tell them to verify it on their end, like they need to send the nukes or whatever. Did I explain that correctly? I feel
Yeah.
like
I think
I
so,
didn't,
yeah.
but like
I think I
they're like
understand.
they have no idea. Like, there's someone every day preparing to fire nukes at every major country, and they don't know the differences to whether or not they're actually sending them or not. And their whole job is to just not care and send it anyway.
That's
Like,
crazy.
that's insane to me. Uh, because there's just so much blowback from that. Like, it's like mutual destruct, or it's like mutual destruction or something like that. I forget the word that we were thinking of, but um, yeah, I think that I don't know. I don't know if China would get involved with Iran and that because I think that everyone benefits from trade. Like no one um is hurt by trade, and I think that I just think that that won't last very long. You know, because people when trade slows down, it hurts countries, and then countries act out. You know what I mean? So I guess we'll just have to see. I don't really know what the future lies. Like you, every day it's different here in this world. So it's just so much uncertainty, like compared um, to I don't know, even like 4 years ago, 5 years ago. It feels like it was a lot simpler. Maybe we were just in high school, but I think that here's one thing. Here's one prediction I have. I think that we're gonna have a fat recession coming soon. If you look at if you look at the different like I looked at some like historical data. You look at the time between um, like the 1920s and then when we had that Great Depression, like it's the same. Like we're increasing the GDP and the economy is increasing at the same rate. I think that we're gonna have a huge drop and like kind of like a reset almost. Uh,
Well, but
but
the 1920s one was because it was a bubble, no? It was because of speculation, mainly.
well,
and then
Yeah,
coupled in with the other factors such as bank runs and stuff that cause. I feel like
yeah,
a lot of our government and banks have considered that. Like right now we don't even though we don't have required reserves for banks, like the Fed has so many things in place to prevent bank runs from happening, prevents banks from literally running out of money. Um, and I don't say like I disagree with you. I just don't think it's like it's so many different factors at play. Like I feel like we were kind of already in that slump because of terrorists and
yeah.
whatnot. But
Here's
if
here's my reasoning behind it. If you look at a lot of the like mega cap stocks and like large cap stocks and like things that affect everyone's lives, they're trading at like huge valuations. Like they're
Oh yeah.
so highly valued right now for like what reason, like what's backing that. And I think that um I mean there's bubbles with like AI, like every company uses AI now, and like what if it doesn't work out the way that it's supposed to? Or like there's like housing crisis. Like there's so many like people can't buy houses right now, they're renting. Jobless claims are increasing. I think that there's a lot of indicators for there to be like a big recession. I don't know if it's going to be like to the point of like the Great Depression, because the Great Depression, like you said, there's a lot of things that a lot of securities that we didn't have in place that we do now have that we have now. But I'm predicting at least that there's going to be a big like drop off in at least like companies' values, like how we value companies in some way. I don't know exactly what would go into that. It's just kind of something I've been thinking about.
Yeah, I guess something to add on to Zach's point about like I agree with pretty much everything Zach said. I've been following the same indicators and I've been noticing similar trends. People have been posting on LinkedIn with like graphs comparing the I guess like some of the important statistics that we've been seeing, and we know that history repeats itself and we're kind of at the peak before like some of the drop-offs. So I do think that there could be a potential drop-off in like the upcoming few months. Of course, I don't know how severe, and of course I stayed like earlier, like we don't know what could happen. Like every day is going to be a different day. So it'll be definitely something to look forward to. I mean, something to look forward to seeing what could happen. But I
uh,
guess another thing that has been mentioned is like, have you seen the debt ceiling? Like, holy crap. We're at the it's like it's at the maximum. Like the US debt is like actually insane. And I'm trying to I really don't know like if there's an easy like way out. Like there's like a lot of things like you like I think Trump like what he wants to do he wants to like solve it, and I think like he's negotiated certain terms with like tariffs where there's more tariffs on certain things that are going to certain places, but like holy like that ceiling might crack sometime soon, and I'm
I'm
honestly looking concerned about that.
I'm like you guys bring up good points, and I would say I probably agree. But I think I'm personally more scared of is when that recession actually hits, what the government's going to do. Because, Republican presidents, administrations have historically not fared well during recessions, right? Because their conservative ideology literally goes against helping out our population during times of need, right? Because they are against like giving stipends, giving federal jobs, expanding the federal job to government to make more federal jobs, right? Like that's goes against the conservative ideology. So that's what I'm personally most scared of is that once that recession does hit, who's going to be in power, who's going to be responsible to getting us out of that slump. And right now, the government does not look like it could is capable of doing that because it's actively participating in the slump. It's not you're not going to come back up. That's what I'm most scared of, honestly.
Yeah, honestly, like big prediction from us to to predict like a potential like big recession, but a lot of I think a lot of trends are like definitely going that way. Of course, like job market's like struggling, and I think the job market will actually continue to struggle in the future. Not only because of a potential recession, but also, like the mix of like maybe firms realizing that AI is just simpler and it's just more cheaper. I'm trying to bring it back to the point of AI, but if you have the, but if you have like a recession and you mix it with a technology that's able to take over like some of the smaller like jobs that maybe could be taken over by AI, but hasn't really been like super like experimented with yet. That could be a very like dangerous combo for the job market. And I feel like lucky that I'm going into a field that somewhat has some, I guess, like human application and won't totally be taken over by AI. I think all of us here would probably think the same thing. But like generally, like on some of the other like labor, such as if you want to be a cashier or something, like that job's if there was going to be a recession and people are starting to look towards using AI for that, those cashier jobs might just totally be gone. Like that could be something scary to think about as if there is a recession and during the process that we come out of that recession, I think a lot of different things will change.
Just put the fries in the bag, bro.
Yeah. I think that it's it's hard, and it's hard to really say what's going to happen in the future. I think we can all agree with that. Like predicting the future is hard, uh, but
Yeah.
all we can do is hope for a better future than we have
I
today.
would
That's
say
better
like
than what it
a,
is today.
yeah, a lot of our the stuff we're saying is like, our speculation, but with the actual reality of stuff is much more complicated. Like especially with the Fed and Jerome Powell knows his stuff. Like he will fight to keep us out of a recession, you know? So obviously the stuff we're talking about is kind of, dumbed down a little bit, but in reality it's much more complicated. You're looking at, statistics that we don't really have yet. And then they're at least that's my hope that they're actively fighting for our economy to keep it afloat.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a pretty good way to like wrap up this episode. Of course, we've talked a lot about like AI potential like a recession, and also we've given like a ton of advice about like how we would approach our first semester of, or I mean our first year of college if we were to do it again. And honestly, that makes up a pretty like big chunk of our episode. And I know there's a lot that I didn't want to get to talk about today, but I think wrapping up here with a pretty long episode for you guys, honestly, as I guess our symbolic return to podcasting will be. I think it's a good I think it's a good way to wrap it up and just to kick off our podcasting journey again. Definitely stay tuned for the episode that we will hopefully release and maybe within like I think our next episode will probably be 2 weeks from the day that this episode will be released. Hopefully within I think one of us will actually be the host this time. This episode was just a very like general three like very raw discussion with no real main host. So I think that's a great way to wrap up this podcast. Definitely stay tuned for another 15-minute study break show that will definitely last longer than 15 minutes. So looking forward to see you guys on the next one.